Fabiana was a 21-year-old who, in addition to studying, worked because she liked having her own money and not depending on anyone. She lived with her mother Camila, who in turn was a solitary and somewhat sad woman but tried to move on with her life. Things were never easy as Camila had Fabiana when she was only 16 years old. Fabiana was the result of a teenage fling that Camila had, which was not serious but led to Fabiana's birth. Camila had decided to raise Fabiana on her own because her father had kicked her out of the house, unable to accept a single, pregnant daughter. At that time, Camila didn't think twice, she packed her things and left. Since then, she had never heard from her father or Fabiana's father. Camila studied and worked hard throughout her pregnancy until Fabiana was born. She never wanted to seek out Fabiana's father because she didn't want to depend on any man for anything and tried to teach the same to her daughter, who absorbed this idea. Camila was a manager at a small clothing store, which was enough to support herself and her daughter. Fabiana studied and also worked as an administrative assistant at a small company. Mother and daughter went on with their lives, but occasionally they argued. The arguments often centered around Fabiana's desire to know who her father was. Fabiana didn't like the idea of her mother withholding this information, and since she could remember, she had always been angry about Camila ignoring it. Camila came up with numerous excuses about why Fabiana's father was not in their lives. One Sunday afternoon, Fabiana decided to bring up the subject again. The sun was setting and the sky displayed shades of orange and pink. Fabiana walked into the kitchen, where her mother was preparing dinner. "Mom, we need to talk," said Fabiana, crossing her arms. Camila sighed, already anticipating the direction of the conversation. "About what, Fabi?" she asked, not taking her eyes off the pan. "You know what it's about." "I want to know who my father is," Fabiana replied, trying to keep the impatience out of her voice. Camila turned off the stove and faced her daughter. Her eyes showed fatigue, a reflection of the battles she had fought alone for so many years. "Fabiana, I've told you so many times," she started. "I know what you've said, Mom, but it's not fair." "I have the right to know," interrupted Fabi, her voice rising with emotion. Camila rubbed her forehead, searching for the right words. "Fabi, I don't want to hurt you. Your father didn't want to be part of our lives," she said, hesitating, searching her daughter's face for a sign of understanding. He doesn't want to be found." Camila felt trapped, with no way out. She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Fabi, I don't want to bring more pain into our lives. We're doing fine without him," she replied, trying to end the conversation. Fabiana huffed, exasperated. "You always say that, Mom, but you don't understand what it's like for me not to know who my father is," Fabiana shouted, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. Camila crossed her arms firm. "I understand more than you think. I was rejected, kicked out of my home, did everything on my own, and frankly you don't need him," she retorted, her voice filled with hurt and frustration. "Maybe I don't need him, but I want to know. It's my right," Fabiana shot back, rising from her chair in anger. Camila turned her back, picking up the pan again. "The conversation is over, Fabiana. I've said all I have to say," she said, returning to her work in the kitchen. Fabiana stormed out of the kitchen, her heart heavy with frustration and sadness. She went up to her room, feeling a void that seemed impossible to fill. She locked herself in her room and threw herself on the bed, letting the tears flow freely. Days passed and the tension between mother and daughter only grew. Fabiana avoided looking at Camila, and their conversations were limited to essentials. More and more, Fabiana felt that her mother didn't trust her and was depriving her of something fundamental. Camila, on the other hand, felt increasingly pressured and worn out by her daughter's insistence. On a quiet night, Fabiana sat at her desk, took out her diary, and began to write. There, she expressed the pain she felt, the confusion, and the need to know more about her origins. The pages filled with anguished words, reflecting an incessant search for answers that always seemed just out of reach. Time went on, but the question of Fabiana's father remained an open wound. The relationship between mother and daughter remained tense, marked by the absence of an undisclosed past. Fabiana knew that, one way or another, she would need to find her own answers. Camila, in her silence, carried the weight of a secret she couldn't share, fearing the impact that the truth might have on her daughter and on herself. Whenever they argued, Fabiana would take a bus to a park far from home to reflect. In this park, she observed the people's movements, felt the breeze, and listened to the birds sing. But the main reason she went there was an elderly man who looked to be about 60 years old, playing an old guitar. The man's music was enchanting to people's ears, and they always stopped for a while to listen to him play. Fabiana loved his music as it soothed her soul. People often gave small change to the musician, but when Fabiana was younger and had little money, she would bring him food. The man thanked everyone sincerely, especially Fabiana. At that point, when Fabiana faced problems at work, in her studies, or at home, she would visit the park to listen to the old man's music. For everyone, it was like a sacred mantra. Sometimes Fabiana would chat with him. His name was Caio, an elderly man who was friendly and polite, and surprisingly, people loved to talk with him. Some even offered him job opportunities, but he refused to leave the park. Fabiana would ask why Caio didn't accept these offers, as they could help him improve his life and share his music with more people. "Caio, why don't you accept these job offers?" Fabiana asked one sunny afternoon while Caio was adjusting the strings of his guitar. Caio lowered his head and was silent for a few seconds. Fabiana noticed that he didn't like talking about it as it made him sad. "You know, Fabiana, sometimes we find a place where we feel at peace, and this park is my place. Here, with my guitar and the people passing by, I feel alive," he finally said with a melancholic smile. In Caio's eyes there was a sadness that quickly led to a change of subject. They continued talking about music, books, and the little things in life. Fabiana saw Caio as a friend or even a mentor who always helped her in tough times with his wise words. Caio cared for the girl as if she were his own daughter. The local police liked seeing Caio there, playing his old guitar. To everyone, Caio brought life to that little park. Sometimes Fabiana would come home a little after 10 p.m. and her mother, Camila, would worry, but she knew her daughter could take care of herself. Still, she played her role as a mother and asked where Fabiana had been. "Where have you been this late, Fabiana?" Camila asked, trying to hide the concern in her voice. "I was with a friend, Mom," Fabiana replied, not giving many details. Camila began to think that maybe Fabiana was seeing a boy. However, this didn't ease her worry as she became suspicious and wanted to know who he was but said nothing. One day, when Fabiana was coming home, she bought a small meal to take to Caio. However, upon arriving at the park, she was surprised to find that Caio was not there. This was strange because he had always been there for years and only left late at night, presumably to go home. Fabiana approached a group of people and saw Caio's guitar lying broken on the ground. The basket where he collected donations was scattered and the books he read in the park were torn. Worried, Fabiana asked one of the police officers what had happened to Caio. "Rodrigo, what happened here? Where is Caio?" she asked, visibly shaken. Officer Rodrigo explained that during the shift change, the park had been left unprotected for a short time, which was enough for some gang members to cause trouble with Caio. There were 3 men, probably Daddy's boys, who harassed the poor man who had never harmed anyone. They broke his things, including his most prized possession, his old guitar. "But where is Caio now? Is he okay?" Fabiana insisted, her heart aching with worry. The 3 men were detained by the police a few minutes later, but during the commotion, Caio tried to protect his things. He clung to his guitar, but they managed to take it from him and broke it in front of him. Very upset and angry, Caio tried to act, but he was pushed so hard that he fell and hit his head, Rodrigo said with a serious look. Fabiana felt a lump in her throat as Rodrigo continued. "When we arrived, we managed to catch the 3 and take them to the station. We called an ambulance for Caio, and he's hospitalized now, Rodrigo concluded. Fabiana felt tears rolling down her face. She couldn't believe something so terrible had happened to Caio, the man who always welcomed her with his music and wisdom. Without a second thought, she took the bus directly to the hospital. She was scared because, in all these years, Caio had never harmed a fly and there was no reason for anyone to harm him. Rodrigo said that unfortunately there are cruel people in this world, but he hoped Caio would recover soon. Fabi decided to go to the hospital to check on her friend. When she arrived, she learned that he was okay and that it was just a scare. Still, she decided to stay until she could see him. Meanwhile, back at home, it was past 11 p.m. and Camila was worried about Fabiana, who wasn't answering her calls. Eventually, Fabiana called back and said where she was. Camila quickly went to the hospital. When she arrived, she saw her daughter worried but safe. Fabiana explained the whole situation to her mother and talked about Caio. She described how kind and good that man was and how he didn't deserve what had happened to him. Camila understood but remained concerned about her daughter, who insisted she wouldn't leave until she saw Caio and spoke with him. Camila agreed, knowing her daughter was determined. The doctor attending to Caio was friendly and kind. He asked the nurses if Caio was alone. They said a young lady was outside and that there had been other people who had already left, but 2 were still there. The doctor went to speak with Fabiana and Camila, informing them that Caio was okay but very sad and that if they wanted to see him, they could go in. He suggested that Fabiana go in alone while Camila waited outside. Soon after, Fabiana entered and hugged her friend. Caio cried and said that the men had broken his most precious possession, his guitar. Fabiana, trying to comfort him, said she would buy him another one, no problem. However, Caio explained that the guitar had special value because it had belonged to someone he loved very much in the past. Fabiana was curious but knew it wasn't the time to talk about that. She assured him that he would be fine in the hospital for that day and promised to return the following night to visit him. Camila thought Fabiana was taking too long and decided to go to the room where Caio was in the hospital. Approaching the door, she heard Fabiana and Caio talking and decided to peek to see who her daughter was talking to. Camila glanced through the door of the room and saw Caio. When she saw him, she couldn't believe it and stood still, trying not to be noticed. Camila returned to the hospital reception and waited for her daughter. When Fabiana left Caio's room feeling calmer, she saw her mother looking anxious, as if something was troubling her. She asked if everything was all right and Camila simply said yes, though her expression was frightened, almost as if she had seen a ghost. Fabiana was concerned about her mother but decided to leave, knowing that the hospital environment could sometimes cause such reactions. At home, Camila said goodnight to her daughter and went to her room. Fabiana was puzzled by her mother's demeanor and asked again if everything was all right. Camila answered that it was and went to her room. As she prepared for bed, Camila reflected on her past. She remembered how her father had been cruel in sending her away from home when she was pregnant. She also thought about Fabiana's father, whom she had chosen to forget because he was a man who lived without concern for the future. Since leaving home 16 years ago, she had not heard from him until that night. 16 years ago, Camila was a young woman who was content with life. She had few friends but cherished each one of them. She loved playing the guitar, a gift from her mother who had passed away when Camila was a child. Camila always brought the guitar, which had once belonged to her mother, to her gatherings with friends. It was at one of these gatherings that she met Alberto through a friend. Alberto was a man 12 years older than Camila, but his physical appearance and charm made him seem younger. Camila and Alberto started to get to know each other better and, after a few outings and dates, he asked her to be his girlfriend. She accepted, despite the age difference. Their relationship progressed and the day came to introduce Alberto to her father, Ricardo. Camila was excited to introduce Alberto, but when he arrived at her house, she sensed that her father did not approve of his 16-year-old daughter dating a man his own age. Ricardo did not just show his disapproval through his actions but also with words, telling Camila that he would never approve of the relationship. Alberto was mistreated by Ricardo to the point that he politely said goodbye to Camila and left. Angrily, Camila argued with her father, telling him that he had no right to interfere in her life and should be more respectful. Ricardo realized his mistake but was at a loss for what to do. Camila then went after Alberto. When she found him at his house, he looked at her with sadness and said that perhaps her father was right since they were the same age. Camila was young and had her whole life ahead of her. She tried to comfort him, but he simply asked her to leave and go back home. Camila couldn't believe this and just got up and left. When she got home the next day, her father Ricardo was worried and apologized, but Camila said it was too late because Alberto had ended their relationship. Her father, a rough and direct man, said it was for the best. Camila then revealed that she was pregnant. Ricardo became furious again and had a heated argument with his daughter. The night that was supposed to be a family dinner ended catastrophically for all three, as Ricardo said he no longer had a daughter and threw her out of the house. Camila packed her things, took her guitar, and left home, but at the door decided not to take any keepsakes and threw the guitar in the trash. Alberto, who had regretted his actions, went after Camila at that same hour, but when he arrived at her house and spoke to her father, Ricardo just said that he had kicked her out and shut the door in Alberto's face. Both Ricardo and Alberto had treated Camila terribly. Later, Ricardo saw his daughter's guitar in the trash and Alberto, who was leaving, saw it too. The next day, Camila, regretful, went back to retrieve the guitar from the trash, but it was no longer there. In the present, Camila wakes up to noise in the kitchen and goes to see what's happening. She finds Fabiana making snacks and sorting small groceries. Camila asks what all of this is for, already knowing the answer. Fabiana replies that it's for her friend Caio. Camila asks if that is the name of the gentleman, and Fabiana confirms. She says goodbye to her mother, mentioning that she is going to class and then to work. Before leaving, she says she will visit Caio in the hospital as he might be discharged today. That night, Caio was discharged from the hospital and Fabiana helped him get to his home, a modest little house with a few old, worn-out pieces of furniture. She left Caio there with the groceries and snacks she had prepared and said goodbye. Caio thanked her for everything and with her help he entered his home. As Caio lay down, he was startled to see Camila there. His eyes filled with tears and he said, "It's been a long time, Camila." Camila, surprised, asked why he wasn't using his real name. Caio explained that he didn't want to be recognized by anyone. Camila commented that he had changed a lot since the last time she saw him, but was there to ask what he wanted with her daughter. Caio replied that he wanted nothing from Fabiana, she just frequented the park where he had played the guitar for years and always listened to him. Camila was surprised and asked if he still had the guitar. Caio revealed that the guitar was the reason he ended up in the hospital because he would have given his life to protect it, as he intended to return it to her someday. Camila was amazed that Caio had kept the guitar for so long. He then explained, "You were everything to me. I made so many mistakes with you when you left. I took the guitar and kept it, hoping to see you again, but I never found you." Camila was touched to learn that he still had the guitar but reassured him that he didn't need to have done that. She explained that her life had been complicated, but she managed to raise Fabiana in the best way possible. She would never have imagined that fate would bring them together again. Camila also shared that despite the challenges, her life was now more peaceful and that the guitar was no longer necessary because she could buy another one. Caio was startled to learn that Fabiana was Camila's daughter and began to cry. Camila, feeling uncomfortable, said she wanted to ask Caio something unusual. He became apprehensive, fearing that she might ask him to stay away from Fabiana. The next morning, Fabiana was preparing some things to take to the hospital when, suddenly, the door to the house opened and her mother entered with Caio. Fabiana, confused, asked why they were visiting. Caio, with a pleading tone, said, "Please, maybe you will never forgive me for what I did by abandoning both of you." Fabiana was puzzled by what was happening. Camilla then explained that his name was not just Caio. She revealed the whole truth. On the day Camilla left home, Alberto, who was Fabiana's father, deeply regretted his actions and went to talk to Camilla's father. However, Ricardo, Camilla's father, had thrown him out because Camilla was pregnant with Caio. Alberto was deeply emotional, but Ricardo slammed the door in his face. As Alberto was leaving, he found Camilla's guitar in the trash. Camilla had thrown away her most precious possession and left, pregnant with Fabiana. Caio then took the guitar and searched for Camilla throughout the city but could not find her. She had moved to another city to have her child and only returned 15 years later after her father had died. Camilla took care of the funeral without mentioning her grandfather to Fabiana. Caio, deeply saddened and unsure how to right his wrongs, kept only Camilla's guitar. He learned to play it, and while his music brought him sorrow from the memory of what he had done to Camilla, it also gave him joy to know he had a daughter in the world, Fabiana. Caio tried to make amends but never found Camilla again and didn't know whether she had a son or a daughter. Camilla then explained to Fabiana that Caio was the father she had been searching for and how strange it was that life or fate had brought them together again. She added that she would not separate them and that Caio could stay and try to set his life right, but it would be for a limited time as she wouldn't leave the father of her child stranded on the streets. Caio looked at Fabiana and asked permission to embrace the daughter he had longed for, apologizing for everything. Fabiana, unable to hide her happiness, embraced her father, who was finally back. Camilla did not hate Caio, but she no longer loved him. Therefore, she felt it was her duty to give him a chance to live with his daughter, but with the condition that he find a job and that it be for a specified period. Seeing her daughter happy, Camilla gave a small smile of relief. Fabiana watched Caio's long, thin shadow cast against the wall of the living room, illuminated only by the dim light of the street lamps. The atmosphere was tense and somber, reflecting years of separation and unresolved trauma. Caio's presence brought painful memories to the surface for Camilla, who struggled to maintain her composure in front of her daughter. "I still can't believe you're here," Fabiana said, her voice low and trembling. "So many times I imagined what it would be like to find you, Dad, but I never thought it would be like this." Caio bowed his head, shame evident in his slumped posture. "I know I can't change the past, Fabiana. I just hope we can build something new from here." Camilla, leaning against the kitchen wall, watched the interaction with a distant look. She felt a mix of relief and anguish. Caio's presence was a constant reminder of a past she had tried to bury but was now back in her life. Fabiana, you should know that it wasn't easy for me to accept this," Camilla began, her voice firm but filled with emotion. "But you deserve to know your father even if it brings up old pains." Fabiana looked at her mother, feeling the depth of the sacrifice Camilla was making. She knew that this reconciliation was not just for her, but also for Camilla to finally find some peace. In the following days, the tension in the house was palpable. Caio tried to adjust by making small repairs and cooking some meals, but he always seemed to be walking on eggshells. Fabiana did her best to mediate interactions, trying to create an environment where everyone could coexist. One night, while Fabiana was at work, Camilla and Caio found themselves alone in the living room. The silence was oppressive and finally, Camilla decided to break it. "Caio, I need to know why you really came back," she asked, her voice low and intense. Caio sighed and sat down on the worn sofa. "I came back because I couldn't live with the weight of what I did anymore. Abandoning you and Fabiana was the biggest mistake of my life. And when I saw Fabiana in the park, it felt like a second chance had been given to me." Camilla watched him, her eyes scrutinizing every line of suffering on Caio's face. She wanted to believe him, but the scars were deep. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Caio, but for Fabiana, I'm willing to try. She deserves a family even if it's imperfect." Caio nodded, gratitude evident in his eyes. "Thank you, Camilla. I'll do everything I can to earn your trust again." Meanwhile, Fabiana was at work, but her mind was at home. She knew that the meeting between her parents was both inevitable and crucial. Anxiety gnawed at her, but she forced herself to focus on the tasks at hand. When she returned home, she found Camila and Caio in the living room. There was an odd silence between them, but it was no longer heavy with tension. Fabiana felt a glimmer of hope. "How was the night?" Fabiana asked, trying to sound casual. Camila glanced at Fabiana and then at Caio before answering. "It was a start. We still have a lot to work through, but at least we're talking," Camila said. Fabiana smiled, feeling that despite the darkness of the past, there was a small light on the horizon. The following months were a roller coaster of emotions. Determined to make amends with his past, Caio began attending therapy sessions, something Fabiana suggested and he reluctantly accepted. Camila also decided to seek professional help trying to deal with long-buried emotions. The therapy sessions helped reveal layers of pain and regret that Caio had carried. He discovered that protecting Camila's guitar was not just an attempt to maintain a connection but a form of atonement, keeping something pure amidst the chaos of his choices. Meanwhile, Fabiana was caught in an emotional whirlwind, watching her parents grapple with their demons. She threw herself into work and studies, trying to find balance amid the growing chaos at home. Her determination was a source of inspiration but also drained her. One day, after a long therapy session, Caio decided to take Camila to the place where everything began for them. He took her to the park where Camila used to play her guitar. "Camila, I know we can't change the past, but maybe we can find some peace here," Caio said, holding the old guitar he had protected for so long. Camila looked at the guitar, memories flooding her mind. She took the instrument with trembling hands and began to play an old melody, the same one she used to play at the park years ago. The music filled the air, bringing a sense of nostalgia and melancholy. "I remember this song." "You always said it was our song," Caio said, his voice choked with emotion. Camila continued to play, the notes floating in the cold afternoon air. For a moment, time seemed to stand still, and the wounds of the past began to heal, if only a little. When Camila finished, she looked at Caio, tears streaming down her face. "Maybe one day I can fully forgive you, Caio, but for now this is the best I can do," she said. Caio nodded, accepting her words with humility. "This is more than I could ask for, Camila. Thank you for this." From that day on, interactions between Caio and Camila became less tense. They began to find a new way to coexist, based on respect and mutual understanding rather than romantic love. Fabiana, seeing this change, felt a renewed sense of hope. She knew that the path to complete healing would be long and difficult, but the steps they were taking were significant. On a cold, rainy night, Fabiana found Caio sitting alone in the living room, staring at the guitar. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked, sitting beside him. Caio sighed, running his hand over the guitar. "I was thinking about everything that's happened, how a simple instrument can carry so much emotional weight. This guitar was your mother's and then became my way of trying to redeem myself." Fabiana took Caio's hand, squeezing it gently. "I know the past wasn't easy, but what matters is what we do now. You're here, and that's what matters to me." Caio smiled, feeling a bit lighter. "You're an amazing young woman, Fabiana. I don't know how I deserved a daughter like you, but I'm grateful every day for it." As the months went by, the relationship between Fabiana, Caio, and Camila continued to evolve. They faced ups and downs, but always together. The therapy sessions helped them all process their emotions and find healthy ways to deal with their challenges. One morning, Camila woke up with a sense of clarity. She knew she needed to do something to move forward completely. She picked up the phone and called Fabiana and Caio, asking them to meet her at the park. When they arrived, Camila was waiting with an envelope in hand. "What's this, Mom?" Fabiana asked, curious. "These are letters I wrote over the years. I never sent them, but now I feel it's the right time for you to read them," Camila said, handing the envelope to Fabiana. Fabiana opened the envelope and found several yellowed letters. She began to read aloud, revealing a depth of pain, regret, and hope. As Fabiana read, Caio felt a lump in his throat. He had never known that Camila had written these letters or that she had harbored so many emotions for so long. When Fabiana finished reading, she looked at her mother with new understanding. Mom, you've been through so much. I didn't know. Thank you for sharing this with us. Camila smiled, feeling a lightness she hadn't felt in years. I needed this too. I needed to release these emotions and move on. Caio, visibly moved, approached Camila. Camila, I didn't know, but now that I do, I want you to know that I'll always be here for you, as a friend and as Fabiana's father. Camila nodded, accepting Caio's support. Over time, the family found a new balance. They never forgot the past, but they learned to live with it in a way that didn't prevent them from moving forward. Fabiana continued to excel in her work and studies, inspired by her parents' strength. Camila discovered a new passion in writing, turning her experiences into stories that could help others. Caio continued to play music, no longer as a form of atonement but as a celebration of life and the family he had finally found. On a sunny afternoon, Fabiana organized a small gathering at home to celebrate Camila's birthday. As everyone gathered in the living room, Fabiana raised a toast. To my mother, the strongest woman I know, and to my father, who found his way back to us. May we continue to grow together and support each other through whatever comes next. Camila and Caio smiled, toasting with Fabiana. They knew the future might still bring challenges, but they were ready to face them together. And so the story of Fabiana, Caio, and Camila continued, marked by love, resilience, and the certainty that, no matter what lay ahead, they would always have each other.
And if you liked this video, subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share this story.